I stand upon the western wall of Uruk as the sun sinks low, and I can feel the warmth of the clay beneath my bare feet. The stones hold the heat of the day, slowly letting it go as the sky softens from gold to rose. I have stood here many evenings, watching the world settle. If you have ever watched the city sigh into calm, then you will understand this moment. The vendors finishing their calls, the children being gathered home, the flute players beginning their slow, thoughtful melodies. Life does not stop, but it quiets. It becomes gentle. Our city is vast, or so we believe. When travelers come, they say our walls rise like the very ribs of the earth. They say our king has built something no flood or enemy could erase. Sometimes, I run my fingers along the baked clay bricks, each etched with the name of our king, Gilgamesh. His name is everywhere, like the heartbeat of the land. Some feel pride at this. Some feel exhaustion. I feel something in between, like standing between sunlight and shade, unsure which to step into. Below the wall, the river glides in slow braids of silver, catching the last light. The Euphrates is our lifeblood. It runs through the fields and hums through our lives. I grew up hearing its rhythms. The river brings silk for our crops, fish for our tables, transport for our traders. In the morning, I often help carry water jugs from its banks, and the cold of it seeps into my hands, a reminder of how much the world depends on things beyond our control. The fields beyond are broad and golden, stretching farther than I can see. Barley, wheat, and date palms rise in careful rows. We grind grain into flour. We bake bread in communal ovens. The scent of fresh bread is the smell of home. The potter's wheel turns, the loom clacks, the animals murmur in their pens. These sounds are the rhythms of ordinary life. If you listen softly, they feel as steady as your own breathing. I am not a noble or a scribe. I do not carve laws into stone or speak with priests in the temple. I am simply one of the many who live, love, work, and sleep beneath these walls. I sweep floors and carry baskets. I help my neighbors grind grain. I share water with strangers when the sun is too strong. There is no glory in this life, perhaps, but there is depth. There is a soft warmth of familiarity, the shared laughter of the well, the quiet understanding that we are all woven into the same tapestry. Gilgamesh, our king, is not like us. He is said to be 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, though I have never seen someone measure divinity to confirm it. But when he walks through the city, it is as if the air bends around him. His shoulders are broad, his eyes keen, his stride purposeful. Some call him protector, some call him tyrant. Most call him unavoidable. We cannot help but look when he passes. Sometimes, I think he is lonely. Not the kind of loneliness of being alone, but the kind that comes from being seen always as more than human. How heavy it must be to live inside a legend in progress. The marketplace is quieter now as I descend the steps from the wall. The stalls are draped with cloth to protect the goods for tomorrow. Jars of honey, bowls of salt, woven baskets, carved combs made of bone. A few voices linger. A woman tending to her goat murmurs a tune. A young boy chases a hoop made of reeds. The scent of clay lingers in the air, mixed with the last smoke from the bread ovens. Evening in Uruk tastes warm and earthy, like grain, dust, and the faint sweetness of dates. I often wonder how the gods see us. Do they see our daily labors as small flickers? Do they see our fears, our celebrations, our attempts to love and be loved? In the temple district, the priests light lamps and chant hymns to Inanna, Lady of Love and War. Her star shines above us, bright as a needle against the sky. Some say she watches and intervenes. Others say she watches and waits. Either way, her presence feels close when the dust deepens. There are canals that thread the city like veins. In the fading light, they glimmer softly, carrying barges of timber, reeds, and clay pots. I like to stand and watch the ripples fold over one another, slow and steady. The workers who maintain them walk with quiet pride, knowing the life of the city depends upon their hands. Water is both gift and burden here. Too much brings flood, too little brings hunger. We live always in conversation with the river, and in these balances of need and patience, our days find their humble rhythm each dawn again. As I walk to the courtyard of my home, I hear the familiar voices of my neighbors. We share one large cooking hearth. It is easier that way. The fire is low, but glowing. Someone tells a story about a passing traveler. Someone else laughs softly. I wash my hands in a clay basin and sit beside them. Life in Uruk is not quiet, but it has its seasons of calm. Evening is one of them. And yet, tonight, I feel something beneath the calm. A ripple, a stirring of something not yet spoken. Gilgamesh has been restless lately. He trains soldiers longer than usual. He consults priests with questions they will not repeat. He stands alone on the palace steps long after the rest of the city has gone to sleep. Some say he seeks immortality in deeds, building monuments and accomplishing feats to outlast time. Some say he seeks meaning. Some say he seeks freedom. I do not know which is true. All I know is that something is moving. The sky deepens into violet now. The first stars wake. The air cools just enough to lift the hair from my neck. I breathe slow. The city breathes with me. All around, the world is still alive, but gentler than before. A mother sings her child to sleep. A potter wipes clay from his hands. The guards on the wall adjust their spears and murmur quietly to each other to keep from drifting into drowsiness. These are the moments in which stories begin, not with trumpets or proclamations, but with the slow shifting of a heart, with the soft ache of a king who is everything except understanding, with the curiosity of a city that senses change like a distant storm. And so, here we stand, you and I, on the cusp of something we cannot yet name. The sun has gone beyond the horizon now. The last light glows like a memory along the walls. Before we go on, take a slow breath with me. If you're enjoying this journey, you're welcome to stay here with me a while. Let the world outside grow quiet. I have heard many stories in my life, but there are some that arrive softly, like a breeze carrying seeds of rumor. This one began at the well, where travelers rested their feet and drank the cool water brought up from the deep. A shepherd from the outer field spoke in a hushed voice, as if afraid the wind might carry his words too far. He said there was a man in the plains. No, not a man, not exactly. A creature shaped like a man, covered in hair, running alongside gazelles, and drinking from the same streams as wild beasts. A being untouched by clay pots or woven cloth, or the warmth of ovens. The others around him leaned in, their hands paused in their work. The story felt like something half remembered, half imagined, and yet it clung to the air as something true. The world outside our walls stretches wide and quiet. Shepherds walk for days across the open land, guiding flocks of sheep and goats across pastures the color of sun-bleached straw. Out there, the sky feels larger, and silence carries its own kind of language. It is not surprising, I suppose, that something wild might grow where civilization does not press itself into shape. Still, to imagine a person living without the rhythm of markets, without the hum of temples, without the frame of houses and daily greetings, there is a strange ache in the thought. We live among each other always. Even solitude here is never empty. Life in Uruk continues as it always does. Women gather at dawn to grind barley into flour, their hands moving with practiced ease, the stones making a steady, grainy song. Potters shape clay bowls on their wheels, their fingers smoothing the spinning forms. The sun warms the courtyard walls until they glow the color of honey. Children laugh and chase each other around the date palms, their small footsteps tapping like sparrows on clay. Smoke from the morning hearths rises in soft gray ribbons. These are the sights that shape our days, day after day, like the river shaping its banks. The priests in the temple district perform their rituals, offering incense and prayers to the gods who watch over our city. I often pass near the temple and smell the rich sweetness of burning cedar and resin carried by the wind. The priests speak of balance, between water and drought, between life and death, between the known and the unknown. Perhaps the wild man belongs to that unknown side of the world. Perhaps he is not meant to be judged by the way we measure ourselves. Someone once said the gods create beings for reasons beyond our understanding. Sometimes to remind us of what we have gained. Sometimes to remind us of what we have lost. It is easy to believe that the city is the whole world when you live inside its walls. The hammer of the blacksmith, the songs in the tavern, the calls of merchants at the market. They make a great tapestry of sound and life. But beyond the fields, beyond the river's edge, There's land that stretches on without boundary. In that land, the stars look close enough to touch. And perhaps the heart beats differently there. Perhaps the air teaches a person to move like wind or stand like stone. I imagine the wild man standing alone in fields of tall grass, watching the horizon as if it were a companion. What is loneliness to someone who does not know companionship? Or is companionship found in the rustling of leaves and the steps of animals? I wonder. The shepherd said that the wild man protected the herds from traps set by hunters. He sprung the snares, scattered the spears, and frightened the hunters away. He did not harm the animals, but he disrupted the careful balance between herdsmen and prey. Some were angry, others were simply amazed. When they spoke of him, their voices held a strange reverence, as if speaking of a spirit rather than a person. I listened quietly, not knowing what to think. It is easy to fear what we do not understand, and yet something in me softened. A man who does not know the city might not know pride or envy or cruelty. What does his heart dream of in the quiet? Our king, Gilgamesh, heard the stories too. He hears all things eventually. The city is his vessel, and whispers find their way to him like currents. When he heard of this wild man, his eyes shone with something stern and thoughtful. Perhaps he saw a rival, perhaps a reflection, or perhaps something else. Something that tugged at that loneliness I have seen in him when he thinks no one is watching. I wish I could understand what passed through his mind in that moment. But we are not given the thoughts of kings. Days passed, and the story continued to travel among us. More travelers claimed to have seen the wild man's footprints near watering holes. Some said they heard him howl to the moon. Others said he watched them with gentle curiosity, like one animal watching another. His presence became like a shadow in the songs we told at night, and I began to feel something I did not expect: compassion. If he has never walked our streets, has never known the soft murmur of shared meals or the closeness of sleeping beside another, does he feel something missing? Or does he feel whole in a way we cannot imagine? One evening, I stood again upon the wall, watching the fields beyond the river darken with the coming night. I imagined him out there somewhere, moving through grass that brushed his knees, hearing sounds that we have forgotten how to hear. The world must feel different through his skin. Perhaps the earth speaks more clearly to him. Perhaps he knows stories the wind has not told us yet. And I thought, if he ever comes to us, we should listen. Not out of fear, not out of awe, but out of curiosity, gentle and human. Do you ever feel the quiet places calling to you? Let us follow that whisper. If you're listening with your eyes closed, imagine the feel of grass beneath your feet. They say the meeting of Gilgamesh and Enkidu began with a rush of footsteps through the marketplace, a shout, a warning, and the trembling of the city's streets. I was there that day, though I did not fully understand what I was witnessing until much later. What I remember first was a feeling in the air, a pressure, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Gilgamesh had grown proud in those days, his strength unmatched, his authority unquestioned. There were times when he acted with a heavy hand, not from cruelty alone, but from a restless hunger inside him, a hunger for something he could not name. And so the people murmured, quietly, behind closed doors in shaded courtyards, yearning for balance. Word of Enkidu had reached him, and something within him stirred. It was said that he rose from his throne with sudden purpose, that he felt destiny tug at him like a tide pulling at the shore. He went out into the city without guards or heralds, striding through the streets as though guided by a thread only he could see. Enkidu was there, near the great gate. The marketplace had gone silent around him. Women paused mid-step. Merchants froze with hands hovering over scales. Children clutched their mothers' garments. And then Gilgamesh appeared, the crowd parting like reeds bending before wind. For a long moment, the two men simply looked at one another. Gilgamesh, tall and broad, bearing the confidence of one who has never met his equal. Enkidu, unyielding and grounded, bearing the steadiness of the open earth. There was no hatred in their eyes, only recognition, as if each saw in the other something they had always carried alone. Then, without a word, they moved, not as enemies, but as forces of nature colliding. The struggle was not violent in the way war is violent. It was a meeting of strengths, a testing of wills. The ground shook beneath their feet. Dust rose, swirling around them. Gilgamesh pressed forward with the power of a temple gate swinging open. Enkidu held his ground with the rooted certainty of a cedar tree, their arms locked, muscles straining not in anger but in exhilaration, like two rivers merging in flood. The crowd did not scream or run. We watched with awe, as though attending a sacred rite. And then, as suddenly as the struggle had begun, it softened. Gilgamesh laughed, full and deep, a sound we had not heard from him in months. Enkidu laughed too, his breath quick, his joy bright. They released one another, standing chest to chest, smiling like men who had just found something they did not know they were missing. That was the true beginning. From that day on, they were rarely apart. Something in Gilgamesh changed, though the shift was gentle, like dawn softening the edges of night. He still walked with power, but it no longer weighed on him like armor. His steps grew lighter, his gaze warmer. He listened when people spoke to him. He paused to watch the workers in the fields, the children playing in the alleys, the potters at their wheels. It was as if the world had become more detailed to him, more alive. Enkidu, too, changed, not by losing his wildness, but by learning how to share it. He spoke more now. His words came slowly at first, but each one was chosen with care. He asked questions about the city, about its customs, its stories, its gods. He marveled at the palace gardens, where trees from distant lands grew alongside fragrant herbs. I once saw him stand among the olive trees, eyes closed, breathing in the scent of their leaves. Gilgamesh stood nearby, watching him with the quiet fondness of one who understands something deeply without needing words. They trained together each morning in the courtyard near the palace steps. I would sometimes sit nearby, pretending to mend baskets, but really watching them. Their movements were graceful, almost playful. Gilgamesh would feint left and surprise from the right. Enkidu would laugh, stepping aside with ease. Their sparring was like a dance performed for no audience but the sun. There were days when they left the city walls to walk together in the fields. Some said they spoke of courage and destiny. Others believed they spoke of dreams and fears. Once, I saw them seated beside the river, their feet submerged in the cool water, speaking softly. The river carried their words away, so I could not hear them, but I remember the expression on their faces, open, unguarded, human. Gilgamesh was no longer a king isolated by his own greatness. He was a man in the presence of someone who understood him. And in that understanding, he rested. The city felt it too. The market seemed brighter. The songs in the taverns grew lighter. The priests smiled more as they offered their blessings. Even the air felt softer, as though Uruk itself exhaled its long-held tension. Women spoke of hope returning to the city. Men spoke of unity rather than rivalry. Children named their games after Enkidu, running barefoot in imitation of him, laughing with abandon. I remember one evening when the two friends walked through the northern gardens together. The sky was painted with the warm colors of sunset. Birds settled into the trees. The scent of jasmine drifted on the breeze. They spoke about mortality, the way every life, no matter how great, eventually returns to the earth. Gilgamesh, who had once believed himself untouchable, listened with quiet attention. Enkidu spoke not of fear, but of meaning, of how a life is measured not by its length, but by the depth of its connections. Their voices were low, but their presence filled the garden with a gentle peace. Sometimes they laughed, loud and bright, at memories or small joys I could only guess at. Other times, they sat together in silence, comfortable in the company of another soul who required no explanation. That was the gift they gave one another. Gilgamesh, who had lived surrounded by people but alone in his heart, finally had someone who saw the man rather than the king. Enkidu, who had lived in the vast beauty of solitude, finally had someone who could stand beside him without fear. They balanced each other, like the sun and the moon, the river and the shore. And yet, as with all things in this world, balance is never still. It shifts gently, slowly, inevitably like the turning of seasons. But even the brightest midday sun begins to lean toward evening. If you are listening while resting, allow your shoulders to sink a little deeper into comfort. Let your breath soften. The world can be very gentle, here in this quiet place where stories live. I have heard that when the hunter first saw Enkidu up close, he did not understand whether he was looking at a man or a piece of the wilderness come alive. Enkidu moved with the silence of gazelles, his muscles shaped by wind and rivers rather than tools or discipline. His hair was long and uncut, and his eyes held something ancient, as though he had listened to the earth itself since the beginning of seasons. The hunter felt fear, not because Enkidu threatened him, but because the sight stirred something deep and unnameable in the heart, an echo of a time before walls, before clay, before cities. When the hunter told his father what he'd seen, the older man recognized that this was no ordinary wild creature. He told the hunter to seek guidance from the temple of Inanna, for some matters belong not to spears but to wisdom. The gods, he said, send mysteries to teach us, and one must meet them not with force but with patience. So the hunter went to the temple, where incense rose in graceful curls, and chants drifted softly through the air like prayers set to wind. Shamhat, a woman of grace and understanding, listened to his story. She was trained in music, poetry, and the quiet languages of the human heart. She knew how to speak without haste, how to reach a soul by invitation rather than demand. She agreed to go with the hunter to meet Enkidu, not to capture him, not to tame him, but to open a door between his world and ours. When they found Enkidu near the watering place, he watched them with the alert stillness of a deer. Shamhat did not move toward him. She lowered herself among the reeds and simply existed beside him. Silence was the first bridge. After a long and gentle pause, she began to speak softly of life among people, of warm bread shared in the evening, of stories told around fires, of companionship that asked nothing but presence. Enkidu listened, his head tilted, as though hearing a language his heart recognized before his mind did. What followed was not conquest or domination. It was a quiet unfolding. Shamhat showed him that closeness could be safe, that another person's presence could offer warmth instead of threat. Enkidu leaned toward her not out of surrender but recognition, as though something long dormant within him had finally awakened. A new kind of stillness entered his breath, a gentleness in the way he held himself beside her. Something had shifted, not lost, but transformed, like a river branching into new waters. When the next morning came, the animals who had been his companions stepped back. They regarded him with a sadness born of understanding. Enkidu tried to run with them as before, yet his steps felt different. The world that had once moved with him now moved past him. He touched his own hands, the grass, the sunlight, as though encountering texture and meaning for the first time. He had crossed into the realm of people, quietly, without ceremony, guided by tenderness alone. Shamhat brought him to a shepherd's camp. The shepherds were cautious, but not unkind. They offered him clothing, simple woven cloth. Enkidu hesitated, unaccustomed to anything but the brush of wind and leaves against the skin. Yet when he wrapped the cloth around himself, there was a stillness in his expression, an acceptance of comfort. They gave him bread, and he did not know what to do. Shamhat tore a piece and guided him. When the taste reached him, warm, soft, rich with grain, something softened in his gaze. Bread is not merely food. It is the first language of belonging. They offered him beer as well, thick and fragrant. At the first swallow he coughed, and laughter rippled through the group, not mocking, but delighted. Soon his laughter joined theirs, deep and joyful. In that moment, a bond grew. The shepherd showed him how to oil his skin to guard it from the sun, how to sit close to others in peace, how to listen to stories and ask questions. At night, when the harp played, Enkidu sat very still, his eyes filled with a quiet wonder. Music is a language older than words, and it passed through him like memory stirring. In the days that followed, Enkidu learned words the way seeds learn soil, slowly, steadily, nourished by warmth. Children taught him first. Children do not fear difference. They took his hand and named things with patience: water, bowl, door, friend. Sometimes Enkidu repeated the words awkwardly, and the children giggled. Sometimes he spoke them clearly, as though the sound had always been waiting inside him. And each time, something in him rooted more deeply into this new life. When Enkidu finally entered Uruk, the city stirred. Children climbed onto rooftops. Merchants paused mid-bargain. Women leaned out of doorways. I was among them, watching the way he looked upon our high walls, our broad streets, our endless motion. He did not seem overwhelmed. He was listening to footsteps, to voices, to the heartbeat of the city itself. It was as though he understood that every place, whether wilderness or city, has a living spirit woven through it. Word reached Gilgamesh quickly. Our king had been restless for many moons, pacing his halls like a lion held in sun-baked stone. When he heard of Enkidu, something quiet entered his expression. Not anger, not fear, recognition. A sense that someone had arrived who could stand beside him, stride for stride, breath for breath. Someone who could look into his eyes and neither bow nor defy, but understand. Some said the gods had created Enkidu to challenge Gilgamesh's strength. Others said he was meant to soothe the loneliness that even kings cannot speak aloud. I cannot say which is true, but I remember standing in that marketplace, feeling the air shift as if the world itself had inhaled, preparing for change. Enkidu stood among us, not as one who abandoned the wilderness, but as one who carried it within him. He was both river and city, both wind and hearthfire. His transformation was not a shedding of his wildness, but a weaving of grassland and clay brick, of solitude and fellowship, of instinct and reflection. And so, two lives once distant as river and star began quietly drifting closer. Have you ever met someone who changed the direction of your life, simply by appearing? When word spread that Gilgamesh and Enkidu planned to leave Uruk and journey to the cedar forest, the city stirred like a field brushed by sudden wind. Some heard the news with excitement, imagining glory and heroic songs. Others listened with quiet worry, sensing that something sacred and uncertain lay ahead. I remember hearing it first in a whisper at the well, spoken by a woman whose hands were still dusted with flour. Her voice carried both admiration and fear. For the cedar forest was no ordinary place. It was a realm of Humbaba, guardian of the sacred trees, where shadows were said to move with intention, and the air itself breathed with ancient knowing. Gilgamesh, though softened by friendship, still carried a fire within him, a longing to create deeds that would be remembered beyond the span of his lifetime. Enkidu, who had walked with animals and slept beneath stars, understood the wild places and what it meant to enter them. When Gilgamesh spoke of the journey, there was no need for persuasion. Enkidu simply placed his hand upon his friend's shoulder, a gesture of trust deeper than any oath. They would not walk this path as king and companion, but as equals, moving step for step. The day of their departure was bright, with the skies stretching wide and clear above us. The sun poured warm light over the walls of Uruk, turning the baked clay bricks golden. People gathered along the streets, forming a quiet procession. There was no shouting, no raucous celebration, only the murmured blessing of many hearts. We watched as camels were prepared with woven saddles and water skins, as provisions were secured: bread, dried figs, oil in sealed jars. The air smelled of dust and barley in anticipation. Gilgamesh stood tall, but his expression was different from the days of his restless pride. His gaze was focused and still. Enkidu, beside him, looked calm and grounded, like a tree already in conversation with distant mountains. I felt something inside me tighten with both hope and worry. The world is full of journeys, but some do not return the same person who began them. As they passed through the great gate, the crowd parted gently to let them through. Children held tight to their mothers' robes. The elderly bowed their heads. I saw one shepherd give a small, trembling smile, the kind that recognizes courage and fears it all the same. I stepped forward just enough to see their silhouettes against the sun. Gilgamesh glanced back, not at any one person, but the city itself, as if memorizing its shape. Then he and Enkidu walked on, footsteps steady, hearts aligned. The land beyond Uruk stretches wide and open. The first days of travel carried them across soft plains where the grass swayed like the surface of a quiet sea. The wind moved gently over the earth, brushing against their skin. Camels walked with patient, swaying rhythm, their padded feet pressing lightly into the soil. The world there felt slower, as though the horizon breathed. I imagined them walking in unhurried silence sometimes, speaking only when words rose naturally. At night, they made camp near the low murmur of streams. The firelight painted their faces with warm, flickering gold. Enkidu, who had once belonged wholly to the wilderness, must have recognized these night sounds: the rustle of small creatures in grass, the whispering of unseen wings. Gilgamesh, who had been surrounded by stone and ceremony, must have felt the vastness of the open world settle around him like a cloak. And yet, I think he did not feel lost. Not while Enkidu was beside him. On the fifth day, the land began to change. The air grew cooler. Hills rose in soft, undulating shapes. The scent of distant pine drifted faintly through the breeze. They would have walked with quiet hearts, sensing the shift in the world around them. The cedar forest was near. The cedar forest was said to be unlike any other place in the world. Trees there grew so tall their tops seemed to brush the edges of the sky. Their trunks were straight and strong, roots deep, bark rich with resin. The air beneath their branches was dim and cool, lit not by open sun but by filtered green radiance. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu reached the edge of the forest, I imagine they paused, not out of fear exactly, but in reverence. To step into such a place is to step into the memory of the world itself. They entered slowly, each footstep softened by the blanket of fallen needles. The scent of cedar was everywhere, sharp, warm, ancient. Birds sang somewhere high above, hidden by the thick canopy. A stillness lay over everything, the kind that feels aware. Time moved differently there. The air carried the quiet wisdom of deep roots and long histories. Humbaba was the guardian of this forest. Not a monster, as some songs later claimed, but a being shaped by divine purpose, bound to protect what was sacred. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu finally beheld him, I do not imagine terror. I imagine awe. Humbaba's presence was like a storm cloud at dusk, powerful, looming, alive with forces beyond easy understanding. His voice may have sounded like wind in cavern spaces, like thunder muffled by distance. I believe the confrontation was not a clash of blades and fury, but something slower and more solemn. Perhaps Gilgamesh felt his heart tremble, not from fear of harm, but from the weight of being seen. Seen not as a king, not as a hero, but as a soul seeking meaning. And Enkidu, who knew the language of wild places, might have spoken not with words, but with silence and presence, a reminder that there is a way to be strong without destruction. What passed between them remains shaped by time and storytellers. But I imagine it as a conversation of spirit, a meeting of three beings standing in the space between mortality and eternity. Perhaps Humbaba saw in them the thread the gods had already woven. Perhaps he understood that the world was already moving forward, and that this moment was not an end, but a turning. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu emerged from the forest again, they were not triumphant in the way warriors return from victory. They walked with slow steps. Their faces were thoughtful. The journey had not filled them with glory. It had deepened them. Their friendship had been tempered in the stillness of ancient trees. They had seen themselves in another light, fragile, courageous, searching. Some journeys do not give answers. They give understanding. Sometimes we face the darkness not to conquer it, but to understand the shadows within ourselves. If you like, you may share in the comments later. What journeys have shaped you? When Gilgamesh and Enkidu returned to Uruk, word traveled faster than their footsteps could carry them. The city came alive with warm celebration, as if every rooftop and doorway had been waiting to exhale. Bells rang from the temple balconies, and garlands of woven reeds and flowers were hung along the market paths. Children danced barefoot through the courtyards, their laughter light and bright. Music drifted through the air, soft and steady. The evening glowed with a sense of shared pride and relief, a recognition that the journey had been great and that the two had returned not only unharmed, but changed. Gilgamesh walked among his people, without the rigid bearing of a king returning from conquest. He walked as one who had seen parts of himself reflected in the wide world and had returned gentler for it. His steps were steady, his smile unforced. When children ran to him, he placed his hands on their heads with a quiet reverence. Enkidu walked beside him, and the crowd parted with wonder. Where once they had stared with uncertainty, now they moved toward him with warmth. They offered him bread, figs, and cool water as tokens of welcome. He accepted these offerings with soft gratitude, bowing his head in thanks. There were dances at evening, slow, winding movements that carried the rhythm of ancient memory. Women traced spirals in the dust with their feet, circling each other in graceful arcs. Men stamped softly in time with the drums, shoulders rising and falling like waves. Gilgamesh and Enkidu did not lead the dance, nor did they stand apart as figures elevated above the rest. They joined in the circle as people among people, their movements loose, joyful, unguarded. The sight of them laughing together was like watching the sun and moon rise in harmony. As night deepened, lanterns glowed like stars inside the city, casting warm light across stone walls and woven mats. Music softened into lullabies, and one by one, people drifted home. The celebration did not end in a single moment. It simply settled, like dust drifting to the ground after being stirred by footsteps. The night was warm, and the air felt full, as though the city itself were wrapped in a blanket of contentment. It was the next morning when the first hint of change appeared. Enkidu did not rise with the dawn. He lay beneath woven blankets, his breath slow and uneven. At first, it was thought to be weariness from travel, the natural weight of days spent on the road. But as the hours passed, his skin grew warm and his eyes, normally clear and steady, clouded with something distant. The physicians were called, then the priests, then the wise women who knew the hidden languages of herbs and leaves. They worked quietly, gently, placing cool cloths upon his forehead, offering water and soft-spoken prayers. Enkidu tried to speak, but his voice was thin, as though frayed at the edges. Gilgamesh stayed at his side, not leaving even when urged to rest. I saw him through the doorway once, seated beside the bed, his hands clasped in front of him, his head bowed. The king who had once commanded storms stood then in perfect stillness, as though the world had narrowed to the sound of Enkidu's breathing. Days passed in soft, aching slowness. The city, once so bright with celebration, fell into a hush. Conversations grew quieter in the marketplace. Musicians played songs that felt like gentle rain. Incense still burned in the temple, but now the smoke rose like prayers that did not quite reach their mark. The river flowed on as always, but even its waters seemed muted. I visited the courtyard one morning and saw Gilgamesh washing the cloths that cooled Enkidu's brow. His movements were careful, tender. He did not call for servants, nor did he allow others to take his place. There are moments in life when love outweighs status, when all roles fall away and only the heart speaks. Even kings must bow before the quiet weight of care. Enkidu drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes he murmured memories of grass beneath his feet, of running with gazelles, of wind that spoke through reeds. At other times, he spoke of the city, of laughter shared, of bread broken, of friendship formed. His words were not filled with fear. They were filled with gratitude. He did not wish to leave the world, but he did not cling to it either. What he feared was leaving Gilgamesh alone. Gilgamesh listened to every word. His face, once bright with pride, softened with something sorrowful and deeply human. He held Enkidu's hand, speaking quietly, not commanding, not pleading, simply being present. The city waited. And then one evening, as the sun cast its final golden light across the rooftops, Enkidu's breath slowed. The air seemed to hold itself still. The cicadas quieted. The breeze paused. Gilgamesh leaned close. There are moments the world changes without sound. This was one of them. We did not hear a cry. We did not see a gesture. Only the stillness of two hands that had once grasped each other in shared purpose, now resting gently apart. The next day, the city moved as though walking through water. People spoke in soft tones. Some wept openly. Others held their grief quietly inside, like a clay vessel filled to the brim. The temple bells rang not in celebration, but in mourning, each tone slow and resonant. The river seemed to move more slowly, as though bearing witness. In the days that followed, the city did not return quickly to its former rhythm. Grief settled slowly, the way evening shadows lengthened across a courtyard. People found small ways to honor Enkidu. A shepherd left a bowl of milk by the riverbank. A child placed woven flowers near the palace wall. A potter carved a simple figure of two people standing side by side. These gestures were quiet, yet they held the weight of many hearts. We do not always need grand monuments to remember. Sometimes remembrance is as simple as choosing to pause. Gilgamesh remained near Enkidu's resting place for some time. No one reclaimed him for duties of kingship. No one asked him to speak. The city understood that grief is a journey that cannot be hurried. I once brought a bowl of water to leave nearby. Though I did not speak to him, It felt enough to share silence. And in that silence, I realized that love leaves marks that time cannot wash away. We are shaped by those we walk beside, even when paths inevitably diverge. There is a tenderness and sorrow that reveals a heart more clearly than joy ever can. And though life slowly began to move again, though the markets reopened and songs returned in softer tones, a thread of longing remained woven into the air of Uruk. Life continued, as it always does, but it did not forget. Love teaches us joy, and then it teaches us how to let go. If this part feels heavy, breathe slowly with me. You are safe here. After Enkidu's passing, a stillness settled over Uruk that no festival hymn or temple bell could break. The city moved, as cities must, but it moved quietly. The marketplace continued to trade. The potters still shaped clay. Children still played in the dust of courtyards, their laughter softer now, like birds calling in the distance rather than near at hand. Life continued because life must, and yet, beneath every sound, there was the echo of a friendship that had reshaped our world. Gilgamesh did not resume his place on the throne. He did not take up the mantle of king with its sweeping authority and its burdens of judgment. Instead, he walked the streets alone, sometimes barefoot, sometimes wrapped in nothing but a simple cloth, his hair undone, his expression distant. Some whispered that grief had broken him, but others, those who watched with deeper patience, understood that grief was not breaking him. It was transforming him. He had lost more than companionship. He had been shown the truth of mortality, not in stories, not in philosophy, but in the quiet stillness of a hand that no longer returned one's grasp. He stood often at the river, watching the water move past him. The Euphrates does not stop for sorrow. It carries all things onward, reeds, leaves, drifting flowers, lost words. Perhaps Gilgamesh saw in that movement the terrifying simplicity of life. We pass through this world, and then we go. Even kings, even those said to be part divine. One dusk, as the sun dissolved into amber and rose, Gilgamesh spoke aloud, not to anyone nearby, but to the sky, the water, the unseen presence of the gods. If death comes with strong and the gentle alike, he said, then what meaning is there in greatness? What is the worth of deeds if all of them fade? If I must die, then everything I have built will crumble into dust. I cannot bear it. I will not. And so he left the city. He did not announce his departure. He did not summon an escort or call for supplies. He simply walked through the gate and into the open land, as quietly as a man leaving his own home to fetch water at dawn. But each of us who watched him go knew this was no ordinary journey. He walked with purpose that stretched beyond the horizon, beyond the known paths, beyond the maps of traders and shepherds. He walked to find Utnapishtim, the one who survived the great flood, the one who lived beyond death, the one who held the secret of immortality. We did not try to stop him. Some journeys cannot be prevented, because they do not happen on the roads of earth, but on the roads within the soul. The land he crossed was vast, and though I was not there to see it, I know the poets describe it well. Plains gave way to stony stretches where the wind carried no birdsong. Fields gave way to cracked earth where old fires had once burned. Gilgamesh wandered far beyond where shepherds bring their flocks. He crossed regions where even the memory of rain felt like a dream. And always, the thought of Enkidu walked beside him. He came to mountains that rose like sleeping giants, their peaks wrapped in mist that glowed silver under moonlight. To climb them was not only to test the body, but to confront the silence of the world. There, the air thinned, and each breath carried the weight of purpose. The stones underfoot were sharp and cold. The nights were long. Gilgamesh walked on. When storms came, he did not shelter. When hunger came, he did not stop. He was driven not by pride, but by that deep, aching question that lives in every human heart. Must we die? What is the meaning of what we do if death waits for us at the end? What remains of us once we are gone? His journey took him to the edges of the world where two scorpion guardians watched the gates of the mountains where the sun travels each day. Their forms were great, part human and part something older, something shaped before time hardened into story. They asked him why he had come, and Gilgamesh, with a voice warm but unwavering, said, I have seen death. I cannot return to the world of the living until I have learned how to overcome it. I seek Utnapishtim." The guardians looked into him, not at him, but into him, and they saw that his grief was sincere, and that his terror of being forgotten was as human as the beating of his heart. And so they allowed him to pass. Beyond their gate lay a path that ran through complete darkness, where neither moon nor sun could follow, a place of silence so complete that even the sound of one's own breathing felt unfamiliar. They say the passage was long, and yet time that was strange and unmeasured. Gilgamesh walked without seeing, guided only by memory and sorrow, until at last he saw light again, not bright, but soft like the first light before dawn. He emerged onto a shore where waters gleamed like polished stone. It was not the sea as we know it. The waves did not break or churn. They lapped gently as though breathing. The horizon glowed with a light that was neither day nor night, something in between, a world waiting to be named. On that shore, reeds whispered softly, and beyond the water, on a distant bank, stood a land that seemed untouched by time. He met the boatman there, Urshanabi, who ferried souls across the waters that separated the living from the timeless. When Gilgamesh asked to be taken across, Urshanabi spoke gently. "Many seek what you seek, but few understand the cost. Immortality is not a gift for those who fear death. It is a burden for those who have made peace with life." But Gilgamesh could not turn back. Not yet. His grief was still raw, his fear still sharp. And so Urshanabi took him across the still waters. The journey was quiet. The water reflected sky, and sky reflected water, until it was difficult to tell which direction was above and which was below. It must have felt like floating between worlds. On the far shore, beneath the shade of a tree whose leaves shone faintly gold, stood Utnapishtim. He did not look like a god. He did not look like a hero. He looked like a man who has lived a very long time, a man whose eyes had seen oceans rise and fall, whose breath had witnessed the birth and end of countless seasons. His face held both serenity and sorrow. Gilgamesh knelt, not out of duty, but out of the gravity of his longing. "Tell me how to escape death," he asked. "Tell me how to stay in this world, for I cannot bear to leave it. I cannot bear to become like the dust that slips between fingers." Utnapishtim listened, then spoke gently. "No one escapes death. Not kings, not shepherds, not even those favored by the gods. The flood that I survived was not my triumph. It was mercy given once and never again. Life is a river that carries all of us forward. You cannot stand still in its current. To live is to move. To love is to risk loss. To exist at all is to one day return to the earth." Gilgamesh wept, not with the sharp cries of agony, but with the quiet, exhausted tears of someone who finally understands what he cannot change. Utnapishtim placed a hand upon his shoulder. "The question is not how to avoid death. The question is how to live so that your life leaves a warmth in the world, even after your body is gone." And there on that timeless shore, something softened in Gilgamesh's heart. Not acceptance, not yet, but the beginning of it, the shape of understanding forming slowly, like dawn shaping the horizon. What does it mean to live a life that matters? If you like, you may think quietly of someone you have loved and learned from. Utnapishtim did not speak immediately. He let the silence settle first, the way one allows dust to fall after being stirred. He looked out across the calm waters, the shoreline unbroken and smooth, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Gilgamesh waited, exhausted yet attentive, like a man who has reached the farthest edge of his strength and can go no further except by listening. "It was long ago," Utnapishtim began, his voice low and steady, "long before the oldest stone in your city was shaped, long before the first shepherd carved his flute to call his flock. The gods had grown weary of the noise of humanity, weary of our endless hunger, our loud ambitions, our inability to live gently upon the earth. They decided the world must be washed clean." He spoke not with fear or bitterness, but with reverence, like one reciting a prayer grown smooth with retelling. "One God warned me, a friend to humankind. He whispered in a dream and said, 'Build a vessel, a boat large enough to carry life. Gather your family and the seeds of all living things, for the waters will rise and the world will drown.'" Gilgamesh listened with stillness, his breath calm now, as though entering a sacred space. Utnapishtim continued, I built the vessel with trembling hands. My neighbors laughed. They thought I had lost my mind. But dreams are messages from beyond reason. We honor them not because we understand them, but because we trust what stirs within us. So I gathered grain, animals, seeds, tools, and those I loved, and the waters came. He closed his eyes, remembering, not with terror, but with a deep, settled recognition. The rain fell for many days, and the rivers rose from beneath. The sea swallowed the land. Mountains disappeared beneath waves. The world became water. No voices, no footsteps, only the sound of endless rain and the rolling of tides. His words were slow, as though shaped carefully from years of reflection. We floated, we waited, and eventually, the waters began to sink. When our boat came to rest on the top of a mountain, we opened the doors. The air smelled new. The world that had been was gone, but the world that could be lay ahead. We stepped out barefoot onto wet earth. A long pause. That was the day I became what I am now. The gods gave immortality to me and to my wife, not as reward, but as burden. To live forever is not to escape sorrow. It is to watch all things change while you remain unchanged. To see the seasons cycle endlessly, yet know your own heart cannot return to spring. There is no triumph in immortality, only stillness. Gilgamesh bowed his head. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice fragile and sincere, he whispered, Then what am I to do? If even immortality brings no peace, how do I live with the knowledge that I must die? Utnapishtim regarded him gently, as one might look upon a child who has asked the most human question of all. You live, he said simply. You love. You build. You share bread. You hold those you cherish while they are here. And you remember them when they are gone. That is all any of us can do. He rose slowly, his movements unhurried. But there is one thing more I can offer you, he said. Not eternal life, but renewal. He led Gilgamesh down to the place where the water met the shore. The waves were shallow here, clear enough that one could see small shells resting peacefully below. Utnapishtim stepped into the water until it reached his calves. He pointed. Deep beneath the surface grows a plant with thorns sharp as sorrow, but leaves sweet as memory. It restores youth to those who take it. Not forever, but for a time. Enough to remind you that life is precious because it does not last. Gilgamesh stepped forward, feeling the cool water lap against his legs. He reached down, diving his hands into the clear depth. He searched among the shifting shapes until his fingers closed around something living. When he brought it forth, it glowed faintly, as though holding a piece of dawn within it. He pressed the plant to his chest. Hope, gentle, fragile, trembling, rose within him. I will take this back to Uruk, he said, and share it with my people. We will be renewed together. Utnapishtim nodded, but his eyes held a quiet sadness, the sadness of one who has seen the cycles of worlds. Be mindful, he murmured. Even the strongest hand cannot close around a moment forever. Gilgamesh thanked him and began the journey back across the still waters with Urshanabi, the boatman, guiding the vessel. The return felt shorter somehow, not because the distance was less, but because Gilgamesh no longer walked with frantic searching. His grief was still there, yes, but now it had softened like embers instead of flame, a warmth rather than a wound. He traveled back across plains and hills, over rivers and fields, until at last he reached the lands near Uruk. The city's walls rose in the distance, shining in the sun, familiar and beloved. Gilgamesh felt his heart swell at the sight, but the journey was not yet done. We are told that before he could return to the gates, he stopped to bathe in a cool pool of water beside the road. The journey had been long, and the dust of many lands clung to him. He set the plant down upon a rock at the water's edge, just for a moment, only long enough to lower himself into the calm, refreshing depths. It was then that a serpent appeared, silent and smooth. It slid across the rock, coiling once around the plant, and before Gilgamesh could reach it, the serpent swallowed the plant whole. Gilgamesh rose from the water in time to see the serpent's body shimmer. As it slithered away, it shed its skin, leaving behind the old and revealing the new. a living symbol of renewal, just not the renewal Gilgamesh had hoped to claim. He stood there, water streaming from his skin, his breath stilling in quiet realization. The plant was gone, but something in him did not break this time. He understood. Renewal does not come from holding back time. It comes from living within it. With this understanding resting gently in his heart, he continued toward the gates of Uruk. The walls rose tall, steady, enduring, not eternal, but lasting enough for love, for memory, for story. When he entered the city once more, he did not announce discoveries nor victories. He simply returned. He walked the familiar streets, touched the warm stone of the walls, and sat among his people. He listened to their voices. He watched the river flow. He understood now that the beauty of life lies in its impermanence. That love is meaningful because it does not last forever. That memory is sacred because it is finite. He did not need immortality. He needed presence, stillness, belonging. And from that day on, Gilgamesh lived not as a man trying to outrun death, but as one who understood the value of each sunrise, each shared meal, each moment of laughter, each breath of air. When Gilgamesh returned to Uruk, the city did not greet him with fanfare nor bells. Instead, it received him with the quiet familiarity of home. The walls stood as they always had, strong and steady in the soft morning light. But something within those walls had changed, because something within Gilgamesh had changed. He walked with a gentleness that had not been there before, and the people who saw him felt it before they could name it. He was still a king, but now he was also a man who understood the fragile beauty of life. He began to build, not monuments to conquer time, but spaces where life could unfold with ease. He oversaw the repair of canals and irrigation systems, ensuring water reached every field. He visited markets and listened to disputes, not as one who judged from afar, but as one who had known sorrow and knew the weight that each person carried. When a mother came to him with worry written across her brow, he listened patiently. When a laborer came to him with questions about land or trade, Gilgamesh sat beside him rather than above him. His voice had softened, his eyes had steadied, and while the people of Uruk did not speak openly of Enkidu, his absence was felt in every kindness that Gilgamesh offered. Love, once shared, does not vanish. It becomes part of the one who remains. I grew older as the seasons passed. My hands, once quick and easy with work, now moved slower. The city changed around me, as cities always do, but it did not lose its warmth. We planted new orchards near the riverbank. We rebuilt old houses that had crumbled in the years before. Children grew, became workers, became parents. The cycle of life continued, but we moved through it with a little more tenderness. Sometimes I would see Gilgamesh walking along the walls in the early morning. His steps were unhurried, and his face was thoughtful. He traced his fingers along the clay bricks, feeling the texture of each one, as though acknowledging every hand that had shaped them. The sunrise would spill gently over the horizon, painting the city in pale gold, and he would pause to watch it, as if it were a blessing newly given each day. He spoke often to the young, not of conquest or fear, but of courage as a willingness to feel deeply. He told them that strength without compassion is hollow, and that to lead is to listen. Some of the youths did not understand at first, eager as they were for triumph and glory. But in time, they too learned the quiet weight of care. There were evenings when he would gather us in the courtyard of the palace, not for orders or ceremonies, but to share food and stories. He would invite musicians to play gently. He would ask elders to tell histories and travelers to describe far-off lands. People sat on woven mats, shoulder to shoulder, and the night would pass in soft conversation. Those evenings were not grand, but they were full. I remember one morning when I walked to the river to draw water, and I found Gilgamesh already there. He was alone, standing knee-deep in the cool current, washing his hand with slow, steady gestures. I greeted him with a quiet voice, unsure whether to disturb such a moment, but he turned to me with a small smile, the kind that comes easily when the heart is at peace. "Do you remember," he asked, "how the city celebrated when we returned from the cedar forest?" I nodded. "I thought then that greatness would save me," he said. "I thought legacy was a measure of life." He let the water move between his fingers. "But now I understand. It is not what we build outside ourselves that matters most. It is what we cultivate within. A heart that loves, a spirit that listens, a presence that can sit beside another without needing anything more. The river shimmered around him, carrying his reflection in gentle ripples. As years passed, the memory of Enkidu did not fade, though it softened, like a stone worn smooth by the river. Gilgamesh did not speak of him often, but when he did, his voice carried a warmth that held no bitterness. Loss had not left him empty. It had deepened him. The walls of Uruk stood tall through all seasons, fierce storms and bright summers. Sometimes, when I felt tired or uncertain, I would climb the steps at dawn and stand at the top, the same place where I had once watched Enkidu first arrive in our lives. From there, I could see the river winding into the distance, fields golden with barley, and children chasing each other through the courtyards. I could feel the heartbeat of the city, a steady, enduring strength. And in those moments, I understood what Gilgamesh had learned. We are not meant to live forever, but we are meant to live fully, to love deeply, to be woven into the world with gentle hands. Here, at sunrise, the world is quiet again. The sky blushes, soft rose and pale amber. The birds begin their morning calls. The city wakes slowly, like someone stretching beneath warm blankets. I close my eyes and breathe in the scent of clay, of water, of bread baking in distant ovens. I am older now. My hair is silver and my voice is softer than it once was. But I am still here, and Uruk is still here. And the story of Gilgamesh lives not in stone nor in kingship, but in the way we wake each morning with a choice to live kindly. The walls stand strong, not to shut the world out, but to shelter those who dwell within. They are our beginning and our return. Time has a way of shaping memory into something gentle. There are days when I forget the sharp edges of grief entirely and remember only the warmth of companionship, as though the heart chooses what to hold on to. When I walk past gardens now, I can still almost hear their laughter weaving between the leaves. The olive trees rustle when the wind moves through them, and sometime for a moment, it feels like the past is close enough to touch. We live on in the ways we influence one another. I see Gilgamesh's lessons in the way our children speak to each other, in the patience of our craftsmen, in the generosity of our harvest feasts. He did not build immortality with brick or stone. He built it in hearts. And perhaps that was the secret all along, that we remain in the world not to the span of our years, but through the tenderness we leave behind. And now, as the sun rises once more over the walls of Uruk, I find myself grateful for every breath, every memory, every quiet morning. The story continues, not in legend, but in living. And the city held its breath beside its king, learning sorrow's shape. If this story has rested softly with you tonight, you're welcome to return anytime. You are part of the circle of listeners who remember. Sleep peacefully.